Cioè, oh, você? No.
slideshow. It's on my screen on the slideshow. What to do? At least it's something. It's not on my screen. It's the full thing. It's strange.
This is when you start the slideshow, then it disappears from there, or what happens?
We're going to find out very shortly. I click the next button.
Maybe it's not totally plugged in.
Oh, it's going in. Oh, perfecting the image, please wait. How can you make that image more, the image of Prabhupada more perfect? It's already perfect. Omajana Tamranda Shagananjana Shalapaya Chakshu Tamina Tavana Shri Guruvena Maha Shri Chaitanya Vishtam Stapitam Bhutale Swayadipada Dharmana Vipati Swayadam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Technology, it's bizarre, you know, it's like, it happens so often, you know, so many places, something goes wrong somewhere along the line with technologies, you know. Okay, anything we have more? Anyway, we'll persevere. I just mentioned to the Lieutenant yesterday when I arrived that it would be nice to do this presentation. In one sense, it's even better at a Sunday program or something like that when you have your congregational devotees here. And the reason for the presentation, as you can see, the title of it is Srila Prabhupada founded Acharya of ISKCON, and this was I was going to say foundational document. It is a foundational document. It's actually a little booklet. Have you seen that booklet? Srila Prabhupada founded Acharya of ISKCON? You have it? Okay. So that was something that was commissioned some years ago by the GBC. And earlier, well not earlier, but last year now, of course, into the new year, at Mayapur last year, Gopanim time, the book was officially released and officially launched. And then we were asked as GBC members that when we travel to different places, oh no, now it's going automatic, when we go to different places around the world, that we should promote this book and present it and discuss it with the devotees and have katha on it. For different reasons. One is a glorification of Srila Prabhupada. Two, it helps us to understand better, it certainly helped me to understand better when I read that book, Srila Prabhupada's position and the history, recent history particularly of our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. And maybe most important of all, and as I say in relation to the congregation, as ISKCON grows and develops, changes take place, and those changes are inevitable and automatic, and it's not necessarily that we want to stop them, but it does require a certain amount of management of those changes to ensure that the mood that Srila Prabhupada, and we have Gaura Prabhu with us this morning, direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada, but he's the only direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada sitting in this room. So, to preserve that mood of Srila Prabhupada, and even within that mood, that there are varieties and there are degrees, etc. But in essence, to preserve that mood of Srila Prabhupada, why he came to the West, why he established ISKCON, what his core reasons were for doing that, and also how he wanted his ISKCON to run, how he wanted it to be managed, not just during his manifest pastimes, but also subsequent to his manifest pastimes. Now, when Prabhupada left in 1977, physically left us in 1977, we then, at that point in time, on November 14th, 1977, when that took place, at that point in time, and actually for the next few months as well, exactly when, I can't remember, I have to check, but at that time, and for a few months after that, there were only direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada on the planet. You know, there were no other disciples of any other spiritual master. So, at that point, preserving that mood of Srila Prabhupada was relatively easy. It was kind of automatic. It wasn't really something that anyone, I doubt at that time anyone really thought about. They had to make that decision about how the parampara would continue. But aside from that one thing, no one was really thinking about ISKCON and the future of ISKCON in terms of preserving Prabhupada's mood, because Prabhupada's mood was still, if not equally as strong, it may even have been stronger at that particular point in time. The consciousness of Prabhupada, anytime you talk to devotees about that particular event when Prabhupada left, it's like their consciousness of Prabhupada was as high as it ever was. It was increasing rather than decreasing. I was in Mayapur this year for Prabhupada's disappearance day, and Bhakti Swami was one of the speakers. And you could just see he was just reliving the events of that day in the morning and leading up to Prabhupada leaving his body. And you could just see it was so vivid for him, it was so powerful the way he was speaking about it, and it was such an intense kind of thing that actually happened. So the consciousness of Prabhupada was very, very strong. Now, of course, as time goes on, as I say, these changes that take place, and one of the changes that has taken place, that again, is inevitable, and it's not that anybody is suggesting, or maybe some people do, but it's not that anybody in ISKCON or in the GBC, etc., are suggesting that it shouldn't happen. But one inevitable change is that, as I say, we have one direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada in the room this morning, and the rest of us are not direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada. So that's a change one change, there are others, but that's just one to mention, that we have to manage properly. And somehow or another we have to, with that change taking place, we have to simultaneously keep Prabhupada in the center and keep his mood in ISKCON going forward. So that's one reason, that the presentation will explain different things, but that's one reason why we want to do this, why we want to keep on. And particularly, that was my point actually, particularly about congregational members, because that's another change that's happened in ISKCON. And that goes back also to my time, your time, when we were joining. But, essentially, in fact, I think the statistics in the Western world, as they've been presented to me, I don't know how accurate they are, but we'll accept them just for the sake of this presentation, that, in the late 70s and the early 80s in ISKCON, 96% of our membership were ashram-based, which essentially meant we were all living in the same building, and in many cases all the men were living in the same room and all the women were living in another room. It was like you didn't even have your own room in those ashrams. 96% of devotees were ashram-based, and 4% of devotees were congregationally based. Now the statistic is, and I don't know if it reflects your situation here in Copenhagen, that 96% of devotees are congregationally based, and about 4% of devotees are ashram-based. Again, it's a change. I'm not suggesting that it's not something that we want to stop like that, but we have to manage that. And one of the things is that our congregation, and I speak now not so much about Denmark and Copenhagen, because I don't know it so well, because I'm not very often here, but if I take the UK as an example, that what tends to happen is that the congregation, they're usually full-time employed, they're usually working full-time, and they'll visit the temple maybe on a Sunday. And therefore, they don't necessarily, certainly not, some of them may, but the majority of them don't, get that core basic training in ISKCON life and ISKCON standards, etc. like that. And oftentimes, One of their main connections, their strongest connection with ISKCON would be with their initiating spiritual master. So again, that can create an imbalance in an understanding, particularly if they're not so well versed. Well, we have two things. One is in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, but the other is in Prabhupada Leela. It's a very important part of the training of ISKCON devotees to be, and you can get it all online now. It's incredible. All of these audio recordings of Srila Prabhupada, all the conversations that he had with his devotees, and it's extraordinary. Particularly you hear it in the audio form, because you can hear Prabhupada's intonation, and you can hear his when he expresses something strongly or this way or that way, that you don't always get in the written word like that. So I would know just from asking people and them giving honest answers, which of course is important, that some people would never have read the Lilamrita, or would never have read Prabhupada's all his letters, books, and those kind of things. So they wouldn't be so familiar like that. So we have a duty. We know that one of ISKCON's main purposes is to educate. So one of the things that we have to educate devotees on in ISKCON, it's a real starting point, a fundamental building block and starting point, is about Prabhupada. Because without Prabhupada there would be no ISKCON. None of us would be sitting here if it wasn't for Srila Prabhupada's sacrifice in 1965 when he left India. Okay, so I'll start the presentation because I'm talking too much without even showing the first slide. You're not seeing anything on that screen. I don't know what to do about that, except ask, oh, that's it, that was it. Does that help? It's actually kind of what I think. No, I haven't changed that. It was actually loose. It's such a shame. Not least because of some lovely pictures of Prabhupada. Anything else, but I just don't know what to do. Okay, so the first slide reads, the header of the slide is 5 key steps taken by Srila Prabhupada in shaping his ISKCON. 5 key steps that Prabhupada took. And those 5 steps were the founding of the institution under the name of ISKCON, the recognition of that founder with the title Prabhupada, the further recognition of Prabhupada with the title Founder Acharya, the establishment of the Governing Body Commission, and the acquisition of land at Sridham Mayapur for the world headquarters and for the construction of the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium, which, by the way, was the only thing that Prabhupada didn't do. He did, of course, purchase land in Mayapur. He certainly did that. And he actually laid two cornerstones, or 2 foundational stones in Mayapur for the TOVP. And where the TOVP is being built is one of those places where Prabhupada laid that foundation stone. But essentially he didn't do any more in regards to that. The other 4 points Prabhupada all personally did himself, and he established all those things himself. But the last one, in that sense, Prabhupada didn't do. So there were the 5 kind of key steps that Prabhupada took. And the first one, why the founding of ISKCON? And it is interesting. When you create a legal entity, we have a legal entity here in Denmark, right? ISKCON Denmark. You have that as a legal entity, isn't it? Yeah. And with that comes certain responsibilities. You're trustees of it, and every year you have to file your annual returns and all that kind of stuff. You have to keep your bookkeeping, all those kind of legal requirements. And even when you're a native of the country that you're operating in, it can be a hassle, keeping on top of all that stuff and making sure you have all your administration in order, etc. So we have to consider here that Prabhupada, he left India at the age of 69. So he was already of retirement age. Most people at that time at least were retiring when they were 65. I know now they're pushing up the retirement age for people, but at that time it was 60. So Prabhupada was also in his retirement years. And he was leaving India. He'd never left India, never been outside of India's borders before. So yeah, just 69 he left. And within 1 year of leaving, and we know the story, we know Prabhupada coming, and he had no, he had $6, he had some books, etc. He had that contact in Pennsylvania, Butler, Pennsylvania, with the, what were their names, the family? Agarwals, the Agarwal family, because there's that famous video when they're asking the lady, who was an American lady, she had an Indian husband, and asking her what was her impression of Prabhupada, and she says, well, his smile was oceanic, and she has this big smile, like she's saying. It's quite a nice memory to have of Prabhupada. But anyway, Prabhupada, so he was 69, never left India, came to America. Within 1 year, he created a legal entity in New York City. I mean, just that alone is two things. One, it's pretty interesting to have done that, and then Prabhupada would have had to follow all the legal requirements that would have been required by the New York State or whatever. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, why was Prabhupada so focused on that particular point? What was so important about establishing both that legal entity and, of course, with the name ISKCON? Obviously, it wasn't that Prabhupada was coming and just chanting Hare Krishna and just meeting people and saying hello and he had a plan. There was a clear plan in place right from the very, very start, and establishing ISKCON as a legal entity was part of that. But then why? Why would, do you have it on the screen? Oh, that's okay. Why? What's the purpose behind that? And that's also very important for us as devotees, remembering these things, because sometimes, there can be a tendency, and again, as we go further forward, and further away from Prabhupada's physical presence, if you look at Prabhupada, and when you do read all of those conversations and letters, etc., you see there's different devotees that he really relies heavily on, and he really appreciated greatly. And a lot of times, they were devotees who were taking responsibility and the burden of managing the society like that. But what's the purpose of the society? The purpose of the society, and the reason that Prabhupada started ISKCON and came to the West, it was to deliver pure love of God to suffering humanity. And of course that's an example that's taken from all the previous acharyas. So that's always the underpinning reason. That's why we're here. We're here to try to give people the opportunity to engage in Krishna consciousness. We're here to just literally be a vehicle to give them the opportunity to engage in Krishna consciousness. But that takes, Prabhupada was convinced that takes organisation, and the best way to do that is in an organised way. And he created this institution then that would be able to achieve that, delivering suffering humanity, with united force, so combined cooperation, united force and strength, over large spans of space and time. That was his plan. Again, it wasn't, Prabhupada was always thinking forward. We talk now in ISKCON a lot about succession, but Prabhupada was thinking of that right from day one, succession. How will this movement continue on? And again, that's another famous exchange that Prabhupada had. I think that was in Vrindavan, I think. Could be wrong. Anyway, famous exchange he had when he asked the devotees, how will this movement continue on when I'm no longer here? And I think it was Giriraj Swami who responded with, well, as long as we have good sadhana Prabhupada and we're sincere. And Prabhupada said, no, it will continue with organisation and intelligence. Now, of course, when Prabhupada says that, it doesn't mean that he's saying you don't need to have good sadhana. It's not one or the other, but the point was, he was really focused on that you have to be organised, you have to engage, you have to use your intelligence like that. Okay, second thing, why did it have to be ISKCON? Why was it ISKCON? This name. Because, well, I won't speak, I'm just going to read some of these quotes. This was from a letter that Prabhupada wrote on November the 8th, 1965, to Kunja Bihari Das. I don't know if you know who Kunja Bihari Das was, but he was kind of like, anyway, he was kind of like the Tamal Krishna Maharaj, for Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, I suppose. Yeah, he was an organizer, and he really pushed things on and got things done. So Prabhupada wrote this to him on the 8th of November 1965. I am one of the workers of the Gaudiya Math. I have no ambition of becoming the proprietor of any math or mandir. Now, we know the history was that when Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj was present, he set up a GBC also. He wanted a GBC. That's what he wanted. He wanted a governing board after he left, and he had at that time 64 branches throughout India, and he wanted them managed by a governing board. And there's many things could be said on that, but the one very, very simple point is that in Kali Yuga, and of course Kali Yuga is ever progressing, that to rely on one person to be able to carry a whole spiritual institution is a very, very risky strategy. And we've seen that in ISKCON many times, that and if you do it and that person runs into spiritual difficulty, the whole thing, the potential is there for the whole thing to collapse. So that's why Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj wanted a governing board, and that's why Prabhupada also wanted a governing board for his ISKCON. So this letter also to Kunja Bihari, this was on November the 23rd, 1965. So you can see Prabhupada is having this very, I know we have email now and it's like, God, you know, you get like 60, 70, 80 letters a day and you're expected to respond to them all. But in these days, this was, you know, maybe typing on a typewriter, maybe even handwriting the letters, and putting them in an envelope, writing the address on, putting the stamp on, putting them in a postbox. And I don't know in the 1960s how long it took mail to get from, of course Prabhupada was still in India now, but you know, that mail then takes a few days to be delivered to the person, they read it, they have to then write back, etc. So the first letter I quoted was on the 8th of November 65, the second is on the 23rd of November 1965. So this was frequent correspondence that Prabhupada was having with Kunja Bihari. It wasn't just, you know, once in a blue moon. In the second letter, he says to Kunja Bihari, just start a branch of your Sri Chaitanya Math, or designate the branch as New York Gaudiya Math. So, as New York Gaudiya Math. So here Prabhupada, he's in New York, he started ISKCON. Oh yes, sorry, he hasn't started ISKCON yet, he hasn't actually officially registered ISKCON yet. And he is wanting, but he's got big plans for spreading Krishna consciousness, and he's wanting to cooperate with the Gaudiya Math back in India. That's what he wants to do, because essentially it's Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's organization. And here he's saying, just call it the New York Gaudiya Math branch. It can be yours. I have no ambition of being the proprietor. I'm just one of the workers of the Gaudiya Math. So let's just call it the New York Gaudiya Math branch like that. I am prepared. This was now. This was a little bit later, but he writes again. I am prepared to accept any condition for cooperation. It's a really strong statement from Prabhupada. I'm prepared to accept any condition for cooperation. So far as my starting, now this is after. What happened then? I should put that slide in actually. I should put that quote in. Basically, Prabhupada got a message back from the Gaudiya Math, basically saying, we're not interested. In essence, that's what, we're not interested, you know.